Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 328. Just like the intro to episode, I think, 324, we have a major Packer-Bear game coming up this weekend, this time in Chicago. The stakes are the same. You're going into this game a half game back of the division lead, just like you were before the game at Lambeau Field. But if you win, back in first place, back in the driver's seat for the 2 seed, that is all on the line this Saturday night at Soldier Field. And then eventually, it sounds like in 4 or 5 years, the Northwest Indiana Bears will be hosting this game. We can talk a little bit about that. That was kind of a big storyline from a Bears fan perspective this week of we might be looking at building our stadium in Gary. So that's a pretty big subplot. But this is a major game on a Saturday night. Crowd is going to be raucous. It's the weekend before Christmas. We finally have had now 2 Packer-Bear games that have significant relevance in terms of the division title and playoff positioning. Well, we'll break it all down. Can the Packers pivot? As Ross Geller would say, pivot. Can they pivot from a tough loss, all of the injuries, losing Micah Parsons for the year, and then who's going to be on the field Saturday, but can they change up their mindset on a short week in a major rivalry game after a disappointing weekend in Denver? We're going to break that down. We're going to talk a little bit, too, about that Thursday night football game. Holy moly. What a game. Might be the game of the year. Seattle and the LA Rams in overtime. And I think from a Packer fan perspective and from a John gambling perspective, we got what we wanted with a Seattle win on a walk-off 2-point conversion last night. We'll discuss the Bucs as well. They lose again. Giannis finally talked to the media for the first time since his calf injury. He did that before the game yesterday. We'll play you some clips. He was chopping it up a little bit and being endearing like he always is. I hate that. I'm starting to hate that quality about him. He's so endearing. How can anybody not like him? It's like Helen Seinfeld. And he did talk a little bit about the rumors, and he's kind of playing both sides, which is what he's been doing pretty much the entire year. But things are taking a bad turn right now for the Bucs in terms of this year and what that could mean by the trade deadline, I guess, or more so by the end of the year. We'll play you some of that audio coming up. The college football playoffs start tonight. 1 game tonight, 3 games tomorrow. It is a loaded football menu for the weekend with that, NFL Saturday games, NFL Sunday full slate. We'll break that down as well. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. In time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan a smash up the middle, base hit to center. Here comes Gomez around third. A throw and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, it's complete intercepted. And there is your Super Bowl dagger.
Booker the drive, gets inside, leans in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, and a pinnacle ball throws it down.
Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it.
It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
Yeah, welcome in Friday morning. This was my last morning show. I have the whole week off. Next week, got to burn up some vacation days. Use them or lose them, as they say, to burn up some vacation days. I worked the whole week this past week. So a running joke right now on the B93 Morning Show is that I basically never work at this point in my career, which is where you want to be as a member of the media. You want to have that established. We had, I think, 3 or 4 weeks, including the Christmas in New York, where I did not work a full week. Then this week, I worked a full week. I'm gassed. Monday through Friday, man, this is tough. I ain't cut off for this anymore. And then I'll have off all week next week to burn those vacation days up. I wouldn't say I've earned them, but legally they must give them to me. And then it'll be a short week the next week, too, because New Year's Day is on a Thursday. That's really throwing off the Throwback Thursday schedule on B93, all these holidays on Thursdays. But that'll be a short week, too. But then we'll be in it. I might work 4 or 5 weeks in a row after that. Starting on January 5th, then the countdown will be on. My wife and I are targeting a second week in March spring training, week-long trip. So then the countdown will be on to that. But then you hit the doldrums, right? Hopefully the Packers stay relevant because that gets you through most of January. And then you're just in the darkness then from late January all the way through February until it finally gets warm in March. Speaking of warm, though, this has been a weird temperature week. An ongoing debate on the morning show the last couple of days has been, will we have a white Christmas? because that looked like an inevitability when we got that 8 to 10 inches dumped on us in, late November. And then we had 2 or 3 other smaller snowstorms where we got an inch or 2 or 2 to 4 inches. And it was really stacking up. I mean, it was heavy, wet stuff. We had it sitting on our roof and probably some ice damming happening there for a while. That's finally all melted away. And then we had the super cold Arctic air. So we began the week in single digits, -0 wind chill. Then it felt like spring. What was it? Wednesday is when it shifted to mid to upper 30s. And I went out for a little jog on Wednesday, and it felt like baseball was right around the corner as everything is melting. It's got a little humidity, a little fog in the air, a little mist in the air as that snow is melting. It felt like we were in late February, early March, mid-March. And then we had a couple of days like that where a lot of melting happened. Now, this morning we're sub-zero again, or whatever, single digits and wind chills below 0. And it's going to be a cold day. Then it's a warm day tomorrow. Then a cold day Sunday. But then when you look at the upcoming forecast, it could be pert near 50 by Christmas Day. So there's a lot of mid to upper 30s, low 40s, and 50s. There are people out there, this does not matter to me, but there are people out there that are enjoyers of a white Christmas. They want that as the setting for the Norman Rockwell Christmas portrait. They want the lights and a little chill in the air and the snow outside and the pajamas and the hot coffee mug, spiked coffee on Sunday morning or on Christmas morning to get through all the unwrapping of the presents. They want all of that. They want it all. And it looked like there was no chance that wasn't going to happen, but we've had so much melting. We're seeing some of our lawn already, and with the temperatures where they're going to be the upcoming week, I don't think we're going to get it. It looked like that was a certainty. I don't think we're going to get it. As a side note, I don't know if we've had this discussion on the podcast. Why can't we bet on weather? Why can't that be a thing? Where are we on that? There's got to be something in the making there, because that is an avenue. Think of how much better winter weather would be if I could log on to FanDuel or go to Potawatomi or go to Oneida, and I know you'd have to standardize everything. You'd have to get a standard forecast. There'd have to be one forecast that sets the over-under. But imagine a winter storm coming up, and you think back to when you were a kid just wanting off of school, but imagine a winter storm coming up, and you can put money on a forecast of 6.5 inches. Over or under. You know how exciting that would be when you look outside, you get the ruler out. There'd have to be an official like National Weather Service or whatever service you use to set the lines. And then you need an official place to measure it because, everybody's got a little different measurement. We all have our different takes on measuring, don't we? We all have little different takes on measurement. And you'd have to have a standardized thing there. But think of how exciting that would be. We're going to get 6.7 inches of snow for the next snowstorm. And then you're just watching it come down and intermittently going out and measuring the snow and debating whether or not you're going to go over or under. I don't know. In a world where we get real-time odds with every pitch in baseball, I cannot fathom why we are not allowed to bet on weather. That would be a future bet you could put down. Will there be a white Christmas? There's so much stuff you could bet on. I might have a problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER as I've listened to myself do this break. This podcast is brought to you by 1-800-GAMBLER. If you or anyone you know, I just feel like that's a no-brainer. There's so much wind speed, snowfall totals. I think winter would be the biggest one, right? Whether you're over under a temperature on a given day, you could do that every day too. But there are so many different things that you could throw money on. Yeah, this might be problematic, but I think that's something that should exist. Let it exist. This is a free call. I thought this was America. One quick little note here before we, literally a little note, before we move on and talk about some Packers and the week that is and was and all the ramp up for practice and the injuries, what the injury list looks like. I got a text from a buddy. I can't believe I missed this one. So, we do the podcast and we try to make as many in-podcast references as we can. Some of them probably go way over people's heads. Some of them hit you right where you live. A lot of Seinfeld references, Office references, movie references prior to 2002. Not a lot of current movie references on this podcast. But we were talking in the Bronco-Packer recap about that Bronco wide receiver his name is Lil Jordan Humphrey. And remember I said on the podcast, I actually thought that they were taking a little shot at him or making a nickname for him, but that's actually his legal name, is Lil, L-I-L apostrophe, Lil Jordan Humphrey. And I got a text from a buddy, a close friend of mine who listens to the podcasts, and he said he just sent me a GIF of Little Sebastian from Parks and Rec. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, how did I not put that together? We could have played this. It's perfect. Little Jordan Humphrey, and it's a horse. Broncos. What's better than one candle in the wind? 5,000 candles in the wind. I'm so mad at myself I didn't catch this one.
Your 5,000 candles in the wind.
That was right there. It was right there for me. So that's a regret. That's a ragret that I have on last episode of this podcast. We should have a ragrets segment after every podcast of things we missed, bad bets we made. There's a lot of those. Ragrets segment. That would be good. Well, all you can do, it's like a post-podcast press conference. After I saw that, and I thought, oh my God, how did I miss that reference? All you can do is get in the film room and watch the same 4 or 5 shows over and over and over again and try to make references on those 4 or 5 shows. I couldn't believe I didn't put that together for little Jordan Humphrey, little Sebastian. All right, so Packers-Bears this weekend. Let's clear up all the injury stuff as we head into a big matchup tomorrow. First of all, Micah Parsons officially put on season-ending IR. He joins. What did Romeo Doubs say about Tucker Kraft? I didn't get that audio up. Remember that? Remember when Tucker Kraft was lost for the year and they were doing locker room interviews? We played that audio of Romeo Doubs talking about him being in a better place. Micah Parsons joins Tucker Kraft in a better place. Add him to the graphic we made from Happy Gilmore with Chubbs and the alligator and Abraham Lincoln. We photoshopped Tucker Kraft into that. Now you can put Micah Parsons in there. He's in a better place. That is up there. I think we're not going to do a year recap here yet, but 2 of my favorite reference storylines from this year are that where Romeo Doubs said Tucker Kraft is in a better place after he tore his knee ligaments. And then I think my favorite of the year is the fake letter from dead Bob Uecker that Pat Murphy delivered to the Brewers. Maybe there will be a fake letter from Bob Uecker about Micah Parsons somewhere, a fake dead letter from Micah Parsons they can read before this game. But he was officially put on the IR. I guess the update yesterday was that it was a clean tear of the ligament, and I guess I didn't even know that there are such things. There's levels to it where partial tear, clean tear, 75% tear. But I guess a clean tear is better in terms of recovery time and surgery, so that was good news. We know Micah Parsons already put on his Twitter page, all of his socials, the face of a beaten-up lion. He has a picture of a lion with like a scar over his eye. It's like literally Scar from The Lion King. And he just had the word September on the top. He wants to be back before next year begins. As we talked about when he went down with the injury, the ripple effect that you are most concerned about is not just this year, but is he going to be out for 5 weeks next year, 10 weeks next year? Because it is a long time to recover. Now, in the same breath, I believe we did say, when you look at the Christian Watson remarkable recovery, where he came back in 9 months from a torn ACL, he's an athletic freak. Micah Parsons, clearly an athletic freak. So if there were going to be a player that could turn that same trick that Watson did, and recover from this and be back on the field in 8 months, 9 months, maybe 7 months. Micah feels like he will be the guy to do that, but they did officially put him in a better place yesterday. They put him out of his misery yesterday, and they put him on season-ending IR. I was sort of hoping, I know we've talked about this on the podcast before, when you talk about the comparisons between Micah Parsons and Reggie White, and kind of the way they came to Green Bay, but the way that they have been just total game changers on the defensive line. I was talking on the HBL morning show this week about the time when Reggie hurt his arm, and I don't even remember what he did. It was a compound fracture or a muscle tear or something. We were talking about how it looked like his season was done, and everybody was doom and gloom, and how are they going to recover with Reggie White unable to go? And then 3 days later, miraculously, as Reggie would tell it, he was healed by the Lord. And he came back with that giant, like, papier-mâché bat they gave him. Imagine giving the strongest player in the NFL, one of the most physical players in NFL history, a weapon. They may as well have given him a gun. Just give him a gun. I laughed so hard, even as a kid, when we saw him out there. I thought, oh my God, they gave him a bat. He has a baseball bat attached to his hand. If you're the offensive tackle sitting across from Reggie White, you already know how much trouble you're in. And then he's got a baseball bat? Good Lord. I was kind of hoping they'd wrap up Micah Parsons' leg like that bat, and then he could use that as a weapon, but sadly his season is done. Now, I'm going to play you some Jeff Hafley audio here in a second. Jeff Hafley had another, which it is every week, an electric weekly press conference. I am going to play you audio coming up of when he discusses how this team is going to adapt after all of the injuries and getting back to a point where they're focused on football and all of the things that are still in front of them that they are still able to attain this year. I'm going to play you that minute audio. But before he did the audio I'm going to play you, he talked about Micah and how hard of a worker he is. And Hafley said, it wouldn't surprise me a bit if Micah comes back next year, comes back in 6 months, 7 months, and he sets the single-season franchise or the single-season sack record next year. And then he said, you can put me out there, put that out there, put that clip out there, push that narrative that I'm putting that on him and I'm putting that on me. But Micah Parsons' year officially done, put on IR this week. Otherwise, the other injuries that were of note coming out of Denver, Evan Williams left the game, did not return. Zach Tom left the game, did not return. Obviously, Christian Watson left the game, did not return. Of those three, a question we talked about on the air this week was, of those three, if you could only have one, which one would you want? Zach Tom, Evan Williams, Christian Watson. Pretty much everybody was simpatico. Everybody was in lockstep on, if you could have one, Christian Watson is the guy you want, because you saw how different that offense looked. And keep in mind, that is an elite Denver defense, even though the Packers put up 26 points on them and then stalled out toward the second half. A big reason they stalled out is you lost your 6'4", elite speed, field-stretching wide receiver, and that bunched everything up, and then the Broncos got in front. And as we went over on the Monday podcast, that allowed that elite Bronco pass rush to pin their ears back and send a variety of blitzers because they weren't afraid of getting burned downfield because Christian Watson was out of the game. For those reasons, if you could only have one of those three, Watson is the guy I want. And I think everybody was pretty much on the same page there. And it kind of sounds like that's what's going to happen. Now, this week at practice, it was kind of odd. You know, you're on a short week. It's late in the year. They did a walkthrough on Tuesday. They did 2 lighter, modified practices on Wednesday and Thursday. Christian Watson practiced on Wednesday, practiced on Thursday, and it sounds like he is going to be good to go by Saturday, which is a huge sigh of relief, not only for what it portends for the offense and the team on Saturday, but also just in relation to Christian Watson and the injury issues he's had. We talked about that coming out of the game on Sunday, that you hate for this to crop up because it's so much a part of the storyline of his career that he has this talent and this speed and the athleticism, and we're finally seeing the started gelling like Magellan. Finally seeing the started all come together. And to be upended by yet another injury would have been a real gut punch. So the fact that it looks like he's going to be able to shake this off and be on the field on Saturday, not just huge in terms of what the game plan can look like, what kind of impact he can have on Saturday, but I think it's also huge just in part of the Christian Watson career arc, the story narrative of being able to get back on the field after what looked like a pretty serious chest or collarbone injury. It looks like he's going to be good to go by Saturday. The rest is very much in question. Now, I don't know if you know this. Evan Williams, he sprained his MCL on the exact same play that Micah Parsons tore his ACL. What kind of dark magic was going on in Denver on Sunday? And I laughed at the locker room audio from Evan Williams this week because he was describing what happened from his perspective on that play. And I guess only one guy went out to check on Evan Williams because every other member of the medical staff descended upon Micah Parsons because of what happened to Micah. And Evan Williams said, I was confused as to why only one person cares about me. Only one person's going to come out and check on me. He was not favored child. Evan Williams was not in the catbird seat of being favored child. Obviously, Micah Parsons was, and all the attention, all eyes were on him. So only one of the training staff went and checked on Evan Williams. That's also a part of the reason why I don't even think I or a lot of Packer fans realized that Evan Williams had left that game on Sunday, because it happened on that same play. So we're all looking at Micah Parsons and, oh my God, I can't believe it. This looks terrible. And the broadcast is talking about that and showing replays. Meanwhile, Evan Williams is in the background and he's getting attended to as well. That is obviously not as long-term as the ACL injury, MCL sprain. I think they're kind of saying 1 to 2 weeks. He called himself day-to-day. He did not practice all week. I don't think he's going to play on Sunday or Saturday. Now, the true up-in-the-air call to me is Zach Tom. He did not practice. He went through some of the walkthrough stuff. He has been able to give it a go with those injuries. Remember the oblique injury earlier in the year? They did have that one thing where he came out in the Cleveland game, got the start there, got hit one time, one play, and then he was gone for the rest of the game. But he's been able to battle through that. This is a knee injury. I don't know that the oblique is totally healed. I don't think anything like that totally heals when you're in the middle of a year. So he's still probably dealing a little bit with that, but the primary focus now is the knee problem. He feels like a true 50-50 to me. The other one was Josh Jacobs, who also apparently re-injured that knee in Denver early in that game, stayed in, grinded it out, had one of his best games of the year, 2-touchdown game, 1 receiving, 1 rushing. What was it, 5.3, 5.4 yards a carry, had the 40-yard touchdown run. That was all after re-aggravating that knee injury, which feels like at this point it's just going to be something he has to deal with for the remainder of the year. That was coming out of the Giants game. They had the MRI, no structural damage. It stiffened up on him again in the Chicago game. They did a second MRI, no structural damage. This feels like a pain tolerance thing, and whether or not he can just get out there without practicing for a lot of the week, and you don't want to burn up any of that energy you have or any of that pain tolerance you have on practice. So they're going to let him rest during the week, and then can he be effective, and can he give it as close to a full go as he can on game day? It feels like he's going to, but he also did not practice this week. So of those guys, I think Christian Watson is going to go. I think Evan Williams is not going to go. I think Zach Tom is a true 50-50, and I believe Josh Jacobs will find a way to figure some things out and get on the field and be a part of this massive game Saturday night. Now, I do want to play you, I got some J.J. Watt audio I'm going to play you too here this morning, but I want to play you this Jeff Hafley clip. We talked about the comments he had about Micah, but then a follow-up question was, how do you turn the page now after such a tough loss and then seeing so many guys go down, and not just guys, key players go down? How do you turn the page, look to the last 3 weeks of the year, and realize everything is still on the table in terms of a division title and maybe a home playoff game? And Jeff Hafley, he is so electric on the mic. I know we've discussed this, and I know I've said it. I'm going to say it again right now. The coordinators do their press conferences on Thursdays typically. It was on Wednesdays this week because it's a weird week. I have not listened to a minute of Adam Stenavich audio. If Adam Stenavich walked in the studio right now, I wouldn't even know who he is. Maybe I would. Sometimes I will listen to the Rich Bisaccia audio just to see if he has any good explanation for anything. For anything. For anything in his personal life, his private life, his public life, for the special teams, for the penalties, whatever. Sometimes I will listen to that, but not often. Every week, I listen to every second of Jeff Hafley. You know what Jeff Hafley is to me right now? Remember in the late 90s, if you're a wrestling fan, do you remember the Attitude Era of WWF and Monday Night Raw and how awesome the mic work was in that era? And the beginning of Raw every week would be 15 minutes of just talking. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, they'd come out and jaw back and forth, and the Corporation would come out, and Jericho would come out, and they were all so good, you didn't miss a minute of it. That's Jeff Hafley. For me, and I think for a lot of media members and Packer fans, the Jeff Hafley weekly press conference is like when Raw would start in 2000 or 2001, the glass shattered and Stone Cold came out, and you didn't want to miss a second of what Stone Cold had. By the way, shout out Stone Cold, happy 61st birthday this week. So that's where I'm at with Hafley, and he just continues to deliver every week. So here's what he said about how do you move on now from a bitter pill to swallow with the loss in Denver on top of all the injuries the team sustained. Take it away.
As far as the team goes, I told them, you can't let circumstance dictate behavior. You know, it's just a week ago we're in here after we beat the Bears, and we're all walking in here all upbeat and ready to roll. And I said, shame on you if you walk in here any different today. That's not who we are, right? And that's our job as leaders and as coaches to make sure that we don't do that. We got really good players. We've played good defense, and we're going to continue to play good defense, and our guys understand that. And I think it's important for everybody to understand that these guys have a lot of pride, and they're going to get even closer because of this, and they're going to play well. And our best players are going to step up. And the guys who haven't played a lot, that's been our job all year to develop those guys. So in situations like this, they're going to step up. And we're going to play hard, and we're going to coach hard, and we're going to do everything we can to win. So that's my take on all this. But this is press on, full speed ahead. And we're ready to go.
I mean, I didn't say fudging go. The only thing that I don't like about these press conferences, and I think we talked about that even going back to last year, his first year as a defensive coordinator. Here's the only thing I don't like. Every time he talks, he gets closer to a head coaching job. I think if he wants it, he will be a head coach in the NFL. Clearly, the biggest connection would be to the Giants because they're going to be looking. They've got their interim coach, Mike Kafka. He's not going to be the guy next year. Jeff Hafley is from that area. He has family that lives in New Jersey. He is right now one of the rising coordinators in terms of head coaching profile in the NFL. So all of that syncs up. He's young. He can lead men. He's got a great defensive scheme. It looks like for the most part, top 6 last year, still top 6 this year. Now we'll see how they adapt minus Micah Parsons, but keep in mind, like what Hafley talked about right there, this was, without Micah Parsons, a top 5-ish defense last year, and that's what they expect to get back to even without Micah Parsons. But every time he talks, I think he is closer to a head coaching job, And it's if he wants it. That would be my assessment. He's got to still do the interview, and we have to wait till the offseason, all that kind of stuff. The Giants would be insane not to hire a guy with that kind of character and makeup and that way that he composes himself in these press conferences. They would be crazy not to hire him as their next head coach, have him in for an interview. It will be whether or not he wants to do it. There have been some Packer fans clinging to the hope of when he left Boston College at the college level, and he was their head coach before he came to Green Bay. During his introductory press conference as the defensive coordinator in Green Bay, he talked about going from being a head coach at the collegiate level to being a coordinator now, and he said he got kind of burned out being a head coach in college. Being a head coach in college, especially now in the transfer NIL portal era, is much different than being a head coach in the NFL or a coordinator in the NFL. But he did say he was a little burned out with being a head coach and being in charge of everything. So some Packer fans are thinking or hoping, I guess, maybe he kind of feels that way. Maybe he likes just being a coordinator. Or maybe he still feels like I want to get another year or two of seasoning as a coordinator before I make that jump. But the more this defense performs and the more he talks and comes up with stuff like that on the fly, he's so engaging in these media sessions. It feels like if he wants it next year, he's going to be a head coach somewhere, and that's a damn shame because it feels like we finally got somebody after wandering around in the wilderness for forever with the end of Capers. And Capers, when he came here, was really good. It should be noted. That should be remembered. I know for 4 or 5 years at the end of the Capers run, it was hashtag fire Dom, hashtag fire Capers over and over and over again, and that kind of became the last thing we remember. But they had the number 1 defense in the NFL in 2009. They had a top 10 defense the year they won the Super Bowl, and the defense was a big part of that. And then it petered out after that. Then who did they bring in? Was it Pettin right away? I feel like I'm missing somebody in there. I feel like there was somebody in between, but Mike Pettin was there. That didn't work out. The debacle in the NFC Championship game against Tampa Bay and Kevin King getting lost and the touchdown before halftime, that was all on Mike Pettin. Then Joe Barry, we don't even need to bring that up, but you just felt like you were hiring a ton of guys. Who am I missing there? You felt like you were hiring a lot of guys, and they were all getting 3 years, 2 to 3 years, and it just hasn't worked out. Packer defensive coordinator history. I'm missing someone there, right? After Dom? God, look at this. No, Pettin was right after Capers. I thought there was somebody else in there. Look at these names. Bob Sanders was before Dom Capers. Remember the Bob Oh, my God, Jim Bates. Do you remember the Jim Bates era? He might have only lasted a year. He was only here in 2005, the year they finished 4-12. Bob Slowick? I don't remember Bob Slowick at all. Bob Slowick's wife just said that. Bob who? Ed Donatel before that. The only reason I remember Ed Donatel's name is because he was behind the infamous 4th and 26 in 2003. Emmett Thomas was before Ed Donatel. That was the only year. That was the Ray Rhodes year. Don't remember him. We all remember Fritz Shurmur, and I think we all remember Ray Rhodes as a defensive coordinator. I still think Fritz Shurmur, when you say name association, name me the best Packer defensive coordinator in the past 30 years, I think we all say Shurmur, right? Fritz Shurmur, he was there forever. 93 to 98, which in the coordinator world is a long time. Now, he was a guy later in his career, right? He didn't have that natural move to being a head coach. Didn't seem like he wanted that anyway, but he was already in his, I think, 60s when he was the defensive coordinator for Green Bay, so that ship had kind of sailed on him. And Ray Rhodes was really good right before him, but he left to become a head coach in Philadelphia. I don't think Fritz Shurmur ever had those aspirations. Oh, yeah, some of these names, my God. Jim Bates, Bob Sanders, yeah, but then it was Capers, Pettin, Barry, and now Hafley. And it feels like after the last 5 years of Capers and 3 years of Pettin and 3 years of Joe Barry, it feels like we finally got a guy, and they, like I said, top 5 defense in terms of total yardage last year, top 6 in terms of points given up. They are number 6 right now in terms of yardage given up, number 8 in terms of points given up. after the Denver game, so still top 10 or close to top 5 on a lot of different levels. We feel like we finally have somebody who has transformed this defense into a decent defense. Imagine Aaron Rodgers if he would have had a half-league defense. You know what I mean? How many years in Aaron Rodgers' MVP years, in his heyday toward the end of it when he had the resurgence with Matt LaFleur, we always said, I don't even need a top 10 defense. Just give me top 15. Just be serviceable, please. If they would have had the defense of the last 2 years, last year and this year, when Rodgers was winning MVPs, or in the middle of 2014, 15, the run-the-table year in 16, and then the resurgence in 19 and 20 and 21, that's all we wanted. We feel like we finally have him, and now we're going to lose him. He's too good. He's too good. That's the problem. But every time he talks, I can't wait. I cannot wait for coordinator press conferences, and I don't think I've ever said that in my life, but he is that compelling when he gets behind a mic. So that got me fired up heading into the weekend in Chicago. On the Bears side of things, Roma Dunze, it doesn't sound like he's going to play wide receiver. He's been out for 2 or 3 weeks. Other than that, everybody relatively healthy. Caleb Williams was limping off the field during that win against the Browns last Sunday. I know a lot of Packer fans were honed in on that at the end of that game. That appears to not be a big deal. He'll be out there Saturday night. It's going to be a vibrant atmosphere Saturday night at Soldier Field in Chicago before they move to Northwest Indiana. What a story that was. That came out this week, and don't think that's a coincidence. Kevin Warren, who is the team president, I want to say, for the Bears, because that is still in what family owns it? The Hallis family or the McCaskey family? But that is still all in that family, but I'm pretty sure Kevin Warren right now is the fronting face for the organization. Well, it has been a not-so-well-kept secret that they are trying to find a new area to build a stadium. Soldier Field has a lot of history. I wouldn't say it's a necessarily aesthetically pleasing stadium, but it has a ton of history. I think it's the oldest stadium right now in the NFL. It is the smallest stadium in the NFL. It's right on the lake. It is an absolute nightmare to get into it or get out of it. If you're driving especially, I mean, you may as well take the train or walk there. If you're driving and the game is tomorrow at 7:20, you may as well leave now. But that has been a problem for Soldier Field in the entirety of its existence. And as more things have popped up around it and more people, more and more people, it is a tough stadium for ins and outs, and they would like to move on from it. They purchased the property at Arlington Heights. Now, some of you may be familiar. I am, because my cousins and on my mom's side grew up in Evanston in the Chicago area. Arlington Heights used to be a horse track, an old horse track, and we used to go there. When I would go down to visit them, they would take me to the horse track for educational purposes. I was going to say names have been redacted to protect the innocent, but Mom knows the names of the people that are involved here. But we would go there in summer, and we'd bet on horses. But that was a horse track for a long time. Then that went away. I don't even remember when. The pandemic maybe, or a little before that, or it had been gone for a while. So they purchased that property. It's a huge property, and they had their eyes on designing a stadium. Then there were some rumors that they could still maybe demolish Soldier Field, do a whole new thing on the lake. Then it went back to Arlington Heights, so they had locked in on Arlington Heights. Well, Kevin Warren released a statement this week, 2 days ago, heading into one of the biggest games the Bears have played in the last 20 years. They've had some years. I mean, the Cutler years weren't terrible. The Lovie Smith years weren't terrible. Made the Super Bowl in 2006, NFC Championship game in 2010. We all remember it well. And they've had some sprinklings of success in there. But by and large, since like 1986 or 87, the couple of years after the 85 Super Bowl, there has not been a lot to be happy about. But it feels like, and I hate to admit it, it does feel like Ben Johnson is a legit coach. It feels like he's a legit play caller. I still don't know about Caleb Williams. It feels like he's a legit franchise quarterback, a cornerstone quarterback, but he's got to do it more consistently yet, I would say. Well, it feels like they're on the rise. They're 10-4 after a 5-12 year. With the new head coach bump, they're in first place late in the year. They're hosting their hated rival. It's not a coincidence with all of that stuff going on that they released the letter this week where Kevin Warren said that Chicago politicians, shocking, there could be some underhandedness going on, some dirtiness in Chicago politics. I've never heard of this. But it does sound like there was a letter or some expressed intent from politicians in Chicago that prepping Arlington Heights or helping them prep Arlington Heights is not going to be a priority for Chicago next year in 2026. And the Bears and their ownership group are thinking, well, we're not asking for any public money. We are only asking them to help us with infrastructure, with bigger highways, with 5 or 6 lanes to get around there and parking and that kind of stuff, just to clear up the bureaucracy so we can build in that area. But they're not asking for any public funds for the stadium. Well, the Bears were clearly put off by the fact that it doesn't seem like that Arlington Heights site is going to be a priority politically in 2026. So they've gone out and said, we now have to expand our search. And they said in the letter, that includes not just Chicago and the surrounding area, but Northwest Indiana. Now, if you've ever driven through Northwest Indiana, the AI renderings that people were coming up with on social media of a state-of-the-art stadium in Northwest Indiana had me cackling this week. Normally, I don't find the AI graphics all that entertaining, but those I did when they plopped him right on the smokestacks and all the dirty, grungy stuff in Northwest Indiana. You ever been on I-80? You ever traveled on I-80? So they said specifically in the letter, if they're not going to help us get the Arlington Heights site ready next year, we have to start looking elsewhere, and including Northwest Indiana. So there have been so many different posts about the Northwest Indiana Bears. My favorite one, because the idea would be that you have to move to Gary, the hellscape that is Gary, Indiana. I once stopped, my wife and I on our way home from a road trip somewhere, just had to. I mean, you don't want to stop in Gary, Indiana ever for anything. But we stopped there at a gas station to go to the bathroom, and it looked like a murder was committed in that bathroom. And I'm not even joking. That might actually be true. I shouldn't joke about that. That was the most horrific public bathroom experience in my life, and I've had some bad bathroom experiences. I once pooped my pants. So we'll tell that story one day. We'll use that as a little teaser for something in the future. So even worse than that, was the public restroom at a gas station in Gary, Indiana. But I saw a post that said if they moved to Gary, we could call them the Gare Bears. Like a play on Care Bears. That was really good. So I'm not sure when this is a big game at Soldier Field. What's that going to look like in 5 or 6 years? It could be the Northwest Indiana Bears. But I expect the atmosphere is going to be raucous on Saturday because of the stakes, because the Bears are in first place this late in the year for the first time in a long time. Matt LaFleur talked about that. He said they're probably going to bring out the big baritone guy. He called him for the national anthem. I think his name is Don Cornelius. That doesn't sound right. That sounds made up. That sounds like something else. Don Cornelius was a defensive coordinator for the Packers in 1981. It's Cornelius, I think. He does the anthems at all the Blackhawk games. Jim Cornelson. Yeah, that's it. What am I thinking about? What is Don Cornelius? The guy's name is Jim Cornelsian, I think, or Cornelson. Don Cornelius. Is that a TV star? He was on Soul Train. Okay. He's like Motown. All right, so I wasn't that far off. But that's a guy, he does the B is a big baritone voice, and he's a guy who kind of sings, screams the anthem, and he motors through it. And if you're not ready for it, it almost feels like it's disrespectful. It's one of those where you kind of think, well, what the heck is this guy doing? But he's been doing that at Blackhawks games for 3 or 4 decades, and all the fans at Blackhawks games, they love it. They sing with him. So if you're at a game at Soldier Field where he does the anthem, everybody that knows him and knows Chicago sports, they love him, and they all sing along with him in that same style where he's powering through it. We talk about over-unders on anthems before the Super Bowl, and I think I've said in the past, most Super Bowl anthem over-unders are around 1:55 or 2 minutes, when if you just played a pep band version of the anthem, you should be done in 80 seconds. I think Don Cornelius, I think Jim Cornelison, or however you say it, I think he's in that range. I think he's done in 75 or 80 seconds. The best of us are. And that's his thing. So, but if you've never heard of him before and you don't know the lore behind that guy, when you're at a game where he does the anthem, it kind of sounds like this guy, this feels not good. This feels disrespectful in some way, but it's not. So Matt LaFleur was talking about that. I bet they're going to have that guy out there to get the crowd revved up. I'm sure they will. Maybe have a flyover or something like that. And it is going to be a revved up atmosphere because from both a Packer and Bear fan perspective, but maybe more so from a Bear fan perspective, if they win on Saturday, I think they're going to win the division. I mean, they would have to lose their final 2. Packers have to win their final 2. That's not out of the realm of possibility, but they would have a game and a half lead then with 2 games left in the regular season for the NFC North Championship. So it is going to be a fever pitch at Soldier Field coming up Saturday night. And of course, the Packers, like when these 2 teams played at Lambeau 2 weeks ago, they're a half game back entering the game. If they win, they can get back in first place in the NFC North and maybe have their eyes set on a 2 seed come playoff time. But those were all the big subplots, I think, this week for Packers-Bears. Packers have been favorites. That has fluctuated a bit. It opened as Packers by 2. We're not touching this for gambling picks. There's just too many unknown factors here without Micah. I don't know. Packer offense, I feel like, should be able to put some points up with Watson out there, and especially if Zach Tom's going to be out there. I am very curious to see now what this defense can do without Micah. We talked about coming out of the Denver game, Micah pops so much with his speed and strength on TV that when he left the game, it looked like guys like Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness were running in mud. It looked like they were running with lead boots from like the Water Temple in Legend of Zelda. But they weren't, but that's just how much Micah Parsons pops athletically on TV. But they're going to have to find a way to get back to what they were last year and get after the quarterback, Lucas Van Ness. Rashawn Gary hasn't had a sack in 7 weeks. Maybe you send more exotic blitz packages, but they're going to have to find a way to recapture that from last year when they did not have Micah Parsons. That will be an interesting matchup to watch as the Packers go into the weekend as 1.5-point favorites. And yeah, that has been, they opened at 2. And then I think the Bears briefly were favored by 1. Now it's back to Packers 1.5 heading into the weekend. So I do want to, with that in mind, with the going back to the defense last year and how good they were last year, even without Parsons, I do just want to play you a quick spin zone here. I saw this brought up on Twitter this week, and I thought it was a very good point when you think about what can this team still do now this year, now that you've lost your best, arguably your best player in Micah Parsons. Cue my music.
It's time to enter the John Hensler B93 Spin Zone, where unicorns exist and logic need not apply.
Oh, come on, man. Believe in something.
You've been warned.
All right, so like a lot of people, coming out of a bad loss on the road where you blew a lead in the third quarter and then you lost Micah Parsons and all these other guys left the game and the injuries are mounting up and you already lost Tucker Kraft for the year. We talked about all that gloom and doom stuff on Monday. I did see a tweet, I forget what account it was, otherwise I would give it credit, but I forgot what it was, that said, let's not forget, for everybody out there that is saying the ship has sailed on this year and you can't win a title without Micah Parsons and it's just going to be tough with all the injuries, let's not forget that going into the year, let's take you back. They traded for Micah Parsons on August 28th, so a week and a half before the regular season began. Let's go back to August 27th. This team was coming off of an 11-6 year. They were coming off of a playoff run where they lost to the eventual Super Bowl champions. But we had hopes, right? And going into the year, on August 27th, it felt like after you drafted Matthew Golden, you finally drafted a wide receiver in the first round. It kind of felt like you had some momentum building throughout the offseason. You knew you weren't going to have Christian Watson to begin the year. And we didn't even think Micah Parsons was a thing. There had been rumors, but he was not in a Packer jersey as of yet. On that date, we all still felt like this could be a 10-win team this year, an 11-win team this year. They could fight for a division title and maybe make a run in the playoffs. Getting Micah Parsons was such a culture shock to make that kind of a move, to give up the draft capital they did, to give him the contract that they did, and then him, up until his injury, basically fulfilling every dream we had for him. We started living in a different world where everything seemed possible, and now that he is gone, it feels like that world is gone. But that tweet reminded me, and I'd like to remind you, that before the Micah Parsons trade, we had high hopes for this team. We had hopes that this team could recapture some of the 2023 magic if Jordan Love is going to be healthy. And we knew coming into the year before that trade, Jordan Love was not healthy really at all last year coming out of that Brazil game. So now we've got a healthy Jordan Love, and you finally drafted a wide receiver in the first round. And some things, you're coming off of a year of Hafley's defense, top 5 defense. They should be hopefully as good or even a little better this year. And that was before they get Micah Parsons, this game-changing player. So even though Sunday was tough to digest in Denver, you have a lead, you blow the lead, you lose the game, and you lose Parsons, and 3 or 4 other players lead the game and don't return. You've already got Tucker Kraft on the IR. He's in a better place. You've got all that stuff going on. And it's easy now to say, well, I don't think they can make the Super Bowl. Maybe they can win the division, but that's probably about it. And maybe they win a playoff game or are competitive in a playoff game. Let's just not forget, before the Micah Parsons trade, we all thought this team was capable of winning 10, 11, 12 games and maybe making a run as they were constituted then, which is basically how they're constituted now, minus Tucker Kraft. When you go back to that day, that's really now the only guy that you no longer have access to that you thought was going to be a big part of the year. There are other players that have come and gone, and Jenkins obviously is on the IR, and Devontae White. There are other guys, but I feel like they're mostly guys that you can replace. Maybe Wyatt is the second level there. Jenkins, you love his versatility, but as we've gone over, did not grade out well at center, had not played well at center by his own admission. So when you go back to that date and all the hopes we had for this year before the year began, that roster of guys, the August 27th roster, is still there. And if they win Saturday, they are still capable of winning a division and being a 2 seed and playing multiple home games in the playoffs. But you've got to get it done on Saturday. I just saw that tweet, and it's hard not to be dejected with the way that things went in Denver on Sunday with the loss and the injuries. But let's not forget, when this season was on its way to beginning and he didn't have Micah Parsons, we still had very high hopes and expectations for this team, and that team still exists. They've got to go out and perform, but that team mostly still exists. Hopefully they go out and showcase that on Saturday in Chicago, in Northwest Indiana. Now, one other real quick non-game-related thing. I did want to play you this clip. I'm sure you probably saw. We talked about it on the B93 Morning Show. J.J. Watt now does hit every week, I think, on McAfee. So, like Rodgers did. Does Rodgers do that anymore? I don't think Tuesday, so they aren't as a thing anymore. So J.J. joins them, and you get McAfee and all the cast of characters, and J.J. and A.J. Stoicism Hawk is sitting on the right side, just staring off into space like it's a 3D art picture. And now I think JJ joins them every week. Well, JJ had an interesting tidbit this week because if you remember, after he moved on from the Texans at the end of the 2020 year and became a free agent, the first time he was truly a free agent toward the end of his career, remember, not on the podcast because the podcast didn't exist, but on the blog certainly, and on the air we talked about how great would it be? The Wisconsin kid, born and raised in, where is he, Pewaukee? Born and raised in the state, walk on at Wisconsin, becomes a star at Wisconsin, becomes one of the greatest defensive players in NFL history and racks up all these sacks, and now he's available. Let's bring him home. And at that time, heading into the 2021 season, you had a real need there for an edge rusher, for a guy that could put pressure on the quarterback. Everything felt like it made sense. As we've learned as Packer fans, whenever anything makes complete sense in our brains as fans, it almost never happens, and it didn't happen. And outside of us talking about it and writing about it, there was never any real tangible rumor out there that maybe the Packers were interested in J.J. Watt. Eventually, he signed a 2-year deal in Arizona, and the rest is history. He plays 2 years there, got hurt his first year, had a good last year, and then he retired after the 2022 season. But now he brought this back up and said on whatever day it was with McAfee, he said in that offseason where he was a free agent, he had one place he wanted to go.
I wanted to play for the Packers in free agency.
I know you.
I wanted to go to Green Bay.
And what happened?
They were not interested.
What?
That was old regime.
Yeah, I was going to say, we got Ed policy now.
Finish your story.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I wanted to go. I told my agents, I don't care what the number is. I don't care how low it is. Tell me what it is so I can at least consider it. I said, I'm not saying it's a guarantee to take it, but I said, if it's $2 million, if it's $4 million, whatever the number is, put it in front of me so that I can at least consider it against all these options. And they said, we can't get a number.
They didn't even make an offer to J.J. Watt?
I don't
What year is this? What year?
This was 2020. This is right before I went to Arizona. It was 2021.
Oh. So you're still playing football?
2020.
You were still.
You should have kicked the door down and went in there.
Yeah,
this is my free agent, my real free agency.
Yeah.
Like I said, you go through the list of everything on what you want to do, where would you like to go, what are you looking for? And I said the ideal situation for me would be to go play for the Green Bay Packers. That's where, I grew up. I watched Reggie White. That would be incredible. I said I'll take a significant hometown discount to play there. And I said, but I just need to know what that looks like so I can at least consider it against all options. And I was not given a number to consider.
Oh, my gosh, Jage. Now, that might have been your agent saying, we're not telling this guy this small of a number because obviously that affects what number we're getting in this entire thing. And there has been stories of agents potentially not telling people things so they can guide them in a different direction. So we're not 100% sure. You would know better than us.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
But what it sounds like right now,
what
it sounds like right now is that the Green Bay Packers said, who? Yeah, see ya. And just kind of moved along with J.J. Watt. That's awesome to hear right now.
I didn't do that.
I can tell you without question right now, I can tell you that $5 million would have gotten it done.
How much did you end up taking? How much did you end up taking?
I think like 15.
God damn, they would have done that.
I don't know. Now, okay, so this got a lot of Packer fans upset, myself included, because it just made so much sense from a storyline perspective, from a sports perspective, from a need perspective. I think it is easy for JJ in hindsight to say 5 years after the fact, I would have taken 5. What he got is what he said. He got a 2-year, 31 guarantee from Arizona, so $15.5 million per year. It is easy 3 years later to say, I would have taken 5 instead of 15. If he would have been presented in that offseason with a contract for the Packers, 1 year, $5 million, contract for Arizona, 2 years, $31 million, I don't know that in that moment, unless the Packers were backloading it with Cole's cash or something, I don't know if in that moment, in whatever, spring of 2021, that he's actually doing that. It's very easy to say that 3 years later and make it a whole storyline, but I'm not sure I completely believe that. It is also worth reminding Packer fans, which I had to remind myself of, that first year in Arizona, he got hurt, he played 6 games, had 1 sack. Now, his last year, I forgot how productive he was his last year in the NFL. He had 12 and a half sacks his last year and played 16 games. It is irksome because you really needed help there that you would not even offer him a contract. And maybe McAfee is right where the Packers offered him $2 million and JJ's agent said, I'm not even going to insult him with that. We're just going to throw that in the trash and never speak of it again. There is a chance that happened. But it is also worth remembering, especially that first year, that JJ did get hurt. He had 1 sack that year. And Joe Barry was our defensive coordinator. And as we saw in the Joe Barry era, he might have put JJ Watt in coverage. He put Preston Smith in coverage. Preston Smith and JJ Watt may have been our free safety combination. Free safety, strong safety combo in the Joe Barry defense. So there's no guarantee if JJ would have taken that hometown discount. And if he ends up a Packer in the Joe Barry scheme, does he thrive in that scheme, or does he end up somehow in like one-on-one coverage with Justin Jefferson? It is worth discussing all points of that, even though those sound bites got Packer fans, myself included, pretty fired up this week that they wouldn't have offered him anything. But yeah, Packers and Bears this weekend, 1.5-point favorites tomorrow night, 7:20 kickoff in Chicago. Now, let's talk real quickly, just staying with football, we'll talk real quickly about the college football playoff. All we're going to say is it starts tonight. I have the future. I have the power. I have the future on Ohio State to win the national title. So that's where we're at in terms of a gambling pick in the playoffs. I'm not making any individual picks on the games this weekend, but, oh, crap, we've got a bowl game going on right now. I think I forgot to put my confidence points on it. Ugh, damn it. All right, well, we'll deal with that later. But tonight is the first game. It's a good one. Number 9, Alabama. Number 8, Oklahoma. Oklahoma favored by 1.5. That should be fun. 7 o'clock. And then a full slate tomorrow. We've got so much football, baby. We've got college football playoffs tomorrow. We got bowl games tomorrow. We got NFL tomorrow. We got a full slate of games on Sunday. We've got number 10, Miami. Number 7, Texas A&M at 11 o'clock. 2:30, number 11, Tulane. And number 6, Ole Miss. They are a curiosity now after the whole Lane Kiffin drama and who their head coach is going to be and what players are sticking around. They are 17.5-point favorites. The other matchup then is number 12, James Madison. They make it at 12-1 as the big underdog, taking on number 5, Oregon. Oregon favored by 21 points. If I were to make a pick, and I'm not right now, if I were to make an official pick, I would think about Tulane covering against Ole Miss just because of all the subplots and side stories, the drama with Lane Kiffin and who's the head coach and what players are fully invested, what players are already looking to transfer to LSU. There's a lot of stuff going on there. And it's going to go one of two ways. Either Ole Miss is going to rally and they're going to absolutely blow Tulane out of the water and win that game by 40 points, like 45-7, or it's going to be Tulane jumping on them early and then it's going to be a game. And if Tulane survives the first quarter, I think they're going to cover the 18 points. 18 points is a lot of points. But I'm just not sure. I don't follow it closely enough. I'm not sure what the resolve is for the guys still in the locker room at Ole Miss with all of the other stuff going on. If I were to pick a spread, though, that's what I would have gone with. I think I'd go, I might still. I'm not officially, but plus 18 Tulane taking on Ole Miss. That's the 2:30 game tomorrow. So that gets underway tonight. Alabama and Oklahoma, 7 o'clock kickoff. Let's talk about the NBA and the Bucks. So 3 days off after the embarrassment, losing by 45 to a tanking Brooklyn team on the road Sunday. Because they did not qualify for the NBA Cup, the Knicks are the new NBA Cup champions, so take the banner down, Milwaukee. That happened on Tuesday. Because that was resolving itself, a lot of the NBA had days off this week. So again, just like last week, the Bucks had 4 days off last week before their game on Thursday. Then they played Sunday, then 3 days off until last night, Raptors in town. The bigger storyline, and we'll talk about the game in a second, which was not a lot to talk about there, they lost again. But the bigger storyline was finally, The Rock. Finally, Giannis talked to the media. This is the first time since he went down with the calf injury that he talked to the media before the game last night. And of course, because of the rumors that have been going on during the time that he has been down with that calf injury, his second injury of the year, a lot of Bucks fans were anxious to hear what Giannis would have to say. And Giannis, once again, and he's allowed to do whatever he wants. He got us a title. We never thought we'd see a player of his caliber. maybe I'm rolling over as a fan there, and I know some fans now, as we've compared this on the podcast before to the Brett Favre tractor watch situation, I do believe some Bucs fans are not turning on Giannis, but are definitely getting fatigue with the rumors, the reports, and how he will not dismiss them. Remember, we had that email last week from Terry that said, hey, Giannis, if he punched a kid in the face, Giannis, he can dismiss these rumors pretty quickly. 1 20-second video on TikTok where he says he's committed to Milwaukee and he doesn't want to trade and he's going to sign a contract extension. Boom, they're all gone. They're up in smoke. But he hasn't done that. So the fact that he talked to the media yesterday had everybody's eyes and ears among Bucs fans. What is he going to say? Clearly, they're going to ask him about the rumors. They're going to ask him about his health, which, by the way, it is a calf injury. They asked him if it's the same thing that cost him the end of the 2023-24 year. That was year one of Dame. Remember the second to last regular season game of the year? He went down with that calf injury and never played in that playoff series against Indiana. Then Dame got hurt in the playoff series. Just a mess. He said, yeah, it's the same injury. It's the same injury in the same leg. So first things first, he has been out for 2 weeks. He said the timeline is 4 to 6 weeks. We thought 2 to 4, so I was hoping that we were getting to a point now where we were maybe a week or a week and a half away from seeing Giannis. It doesn't feel like we're all that close. It feels like we are probably still, from today, December 19th, it feels like we're probably still at minimum 3 weeks away from him hitting the floor and probably 4 weeks at best for him playing in an actual NBA game. So we are still a long way away. That's first. Then he did talk about the rumors, and Giannis did what he's been doing, and that's essentially playing both sides of the coin.
I didn't hear about the report. Again, if my agent is talking to the Bucs about it, he's his own person. He can have any conversation he wants about it. That doesn't. At the end of the day, I don't work for my agent. My agent works for me.
Okay, first of all, that's true. So it's odd the way he approached that of saying my agent's his own guy. He can talk to whoever he wants, but he works for me. Well, you know what you could tell him, Giannis? I know this is crazy. You could say, I want to be in Milwaukee. I don't want to entertain these trade ideas. I'm tired of the rumors. I'm tired of my teammates having to answer rumors. Stop doing this. But he acts like his agent is just an independent body of him that he has zero control over, even though he just said he could control him.
And there's going to be conversation that's going to be made between him and the Bucs and him and his other players and him and other teams and other GMs, executives around the league. It's something that we can't control.
You can.
But at the end of the day, I personally have not had the conversation with the Bucs. I'm still.
But his agent has.
Locked in on my teammates. Most importantly, locked in on me getting back healthy, and then locked in on my teammates and how can I help them from the sideline or encourage them to, be able to play free.
All right, so that's pretty much, he did a 23-minute session, and that's sort of the gist of it, that, yeah, the rumors are out there. There's nothing I can do about them. I can't do it. My agent's out there negotiating. I can't do anything about that. Well, but could you? I think you probably could. So this has been a continuing theme, basically since the offseason with all the rumors, which I do believe a lot of them are fake, but there's probably some truth to some of them. This started with the offseason and has continued the entirety of the year. It was only quiet when they won 4 of their first 5 games. When he was healthy and they went 4-1 their first 5 games, they were winning on national TV, they were beating the Knicks. That was the only time that these kinds of things got quiet. And then he went down. They've lost a bunch of games. And now after last night, they're 11-16. And it feels like things are disintegrating a little bit around this team. And now the rumors have cranked up again. But he could very easily put an end to them. But he is doing what he's done now for about 4 or 5 months. And kind of what he's done a lot of his career in Milwaukee. It's just been emphasized right now because they're bad. I mean, they are bad. Without him, they are not a very good team. And that is not something we have said in a long, long time. And you have to go back to his rookie year where they won 15 games. They were in the playoffs his second year. Then they had a little slump the year after that. So maybe 2015 you'd have to go back to a team that was going to be a 35-40 win team and not make the playoffs like they did that year. It's been a long time since that happened. But Giannis is pretty much continuing on the path that he has carved out since summer, and in some ways his whole career, where he wants to play meaningful basketball games. And I do believe he wants to be in Milwaukee, and he wants this to work out. He wants to be a one-team guy. But more than anything, like that other email we talked about 2 weeks ago, the only thing he values more than loyalty and staying with one franchise his whole career is winning. And if the franchise he's on, and it could be any franchise, it could be the Knicks, it could be the Bucs, any franchise. if it looks to him like they are not going to be competitive, like they can't compete for titles, like there's no short turnaround to competing for titles, then he wants to get to a place where he can compete for titles. Now, Giannis also knows that a big part of his brand is loyalty. And now the 3 or 4 times in his career where it came into question whether or not he was staying, he has signed contract extensions. Remember, he did that big speech at the end of the title run, at the end of Game 6 at his post-game presser, where he said, this is how you bleep and do it. Anybody can go to any other team and form a super team, but you stay and you grind and you work. And that's all a part of the reason we love Giannis. And I think maybe some of that has changed a little bit, as everybody is allowed to do. As the years and days go by, you are allowed to change your perspective. But he knows that that has been one of his hallmarks. That loyalty brand is a big part of it, and he does not want to abandon that. And he doesn't want to look like the bad guy in front of Bucks fans, which I get. I totally understand it. So he does things like what we just played. My agent is doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not talking to the Bucks. My agent is. I'm locked in on the guys. I'm locked in on the locker room. And while parts of that are true, there are other parts of it where you could control this. But he is looking to protect the loyalty image, which I get. And he is also trying to leave himself a door to get out if this team is not going to be good and is not going to be good for the foreseeable future. So he is playing it on both sides. I don't begrudge him that, by the way. I'm not angry about that. I think at 31 years old with 2 MVPs and a finals MVP and 50 points in a clinching game and all the stuff that we've got to enjoy with him as a member of this franchise, he is allowed to do that. But I'm just calling it as we see it now. That's kind of what's been happening since summer. He has always tried to put pressure on the Bucks to stay competitive, to make trades like they did for Dame and change head coaches or whatever. He has always tried to keep pressure on the franchise by saying, I want to play for a winner. And they've acquiesced. They've done a million different things to try to make this roster better around him, to get different versions of this roster around him. This one doesn't look like it's working out really at all right now. There's still some time to go. But that whole 23-minute press conference yesterday, it was a lot of Giannis doing that. I'm locked in on the team. I'm locked in on work. I'm locked in on the guys, which he probably is. And my agent's doing this, and I'm not. But he also has his eye on that, too. So he is kind of playing both sides of the coin here, which, again, I don't hate, but that's what he's doing. Now, the Bucks go out there last night and lose again. And it was ugly again. And they lose, 111 to 105. They were down by 7 in the fourth quarter, got to within 3, couldn't get over the hump. Turnovers were a big problem. KPJ had kind of a good game, 22 points, 13 assists, but had 7 turnovers. Bobby was good off the bench, not a good defender, though, and this team is floundering. Now, here is my concern, and it's a fairly big concern at this point. I just don't see how this team is going to be relevant when he comes back. I hope I'm wrong. I hope the guys as presently constituted, they didn't have Kyle Kuzma, who I never thought that they would miss, but I think they missed him last night, and he has been playing better. He was out with an illness, so you're already down Giannis, then you were down Kuzma. And Giannis and Kevin Porter Jr., arguably your 2 best players, I guess not argue with Giannis, but I guess you could argue maybe KPJ. They have only played 4 games together this year, so injuries have been a part of the reason why they're 11-17, but they just don't look very good right now. And if Giannis is out for 4 more weeks, so we are talking about a mid-January return, that means they're going to have to navigate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe 13 more games without Giannis. They have won 1 game this year where Giannis has not played. I think they're 1-7 now, or 1-8 in games where Giannis has not played. And they are now 11-17. And by the way, after last night's loss, they are now on the outside looking in on the play-in tournament. They're not even the 10 seed anymore. The Bulls are, so they're outside of even that. We talked about when Giannis went down with the calf injury, and at that time we were hoping it was a 2 to 4 week injury. We said you got to find a way to navigate this and be relevant when he comes back. Well, so far that has not worked out, and now we find out that his length of injury is probably double what we thought it was going to be. So you are right now 11-17. You go to Minnesota. I mean, I don't know. We don't have to do this for every game, but look at the schedule. They start a 5-game road trip on Sunday in Minnesota. That's a loss. They go to Indiana. The Pacers are a 6-win team. You hope it's a win, but you already lost this year to Washington. You lost to Brooklyn, so it's hard to say anything's a win. That's winnable. Go to Memphis. That, I guess, is winnable. Go to Charlotte. Go to Chicago. Then you're home with Washington, home with Charlotte. Then you have a West Coast road trip when Giannis is still out, at Sacramento, at Golden State, at the Lakers, at Denver, before you come home with Minnesota again, and then you're in San Antonio taking on Wemby and the Spurs. I see right now if you look at those games, let's say he comes back for that home game against Minnesota on January 13th. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games from now. I think this team wins 2 games. And honestly, and again, I hope I'm wrong. I hope they come together. I hope they find some chemistry. I hope they win way more games than I expect them to. But in those 11 games, I see 2 games. Indiana and then home against Washington, maybe home against. So let's be gracious and give them 3 games. Home against Washington, home against Charlotte, at Indiana. I don't see them winning any road games other than the Indiana game, and then I don't see them winning any games on the West Coast. So let's say they go 3-8 then in those 11 games. That would mean they are going to be 14-25 when Giannis comes back. I don't see any way out of it at that point. You're 11 games under. I don't even think they're that good of a team. If Giannis is fully healthy and everything comes together with this version of this team, I believe it's a 45-46 win team at their max level. So it's not like Giannis is going to come back and they're 14-25 and they're going to rip off 10 games in a row. They're not that good even fully healthy this year. So something extraordinary would have to happen with the roster as presently put together. But I think you're in real danger here of being 9, 10, 11 games under 500 when Giannis comes back. And at that point, there's nothing he can do. You're not going to get back. Maybe you get back into a play-in tournament spot. Maybe you get back to the 10 seed, and then you have a chance to beat the 9 seed. Then you've got to beat the loser of the 7-8 game, and then that gets you into the playoffs. That's what you have to do to get into the playoffs. I think this season is looking like it's going to be a wash, unfortunately, and I think they need to move on from Doc. And I know we said that last podcast, and the loss in Brooklyn was embarrassing. I think last night's loss, given 3 days rest, that Raptors team is not bad. They were down a couple of key players, too. With 3 days off at home, you got to find a way to win that game, and they couldn't do it. And they just look lost. Turnovers, poor defensive rotations. You know, like I said, we're in year 2 now with Doc, and I guess 2.5, you could maybe say, since he got parachuted in 3 years ago. I think you got to move on. I think maybe you move him to a front office role, make Darvin Ham the coach the rest of the year. I don't think the outcome of the year is going to be any different either way, whether it's Doc or Darvin Ham. And then you're going to have to see what happens. You're going to have to see how badly Giannis wants to leave at the end of the year. You're going to have to conduct a coaching search. You might have a totally different roster next year. But it feels like we are on a path that I don't want to be on right now, but I don't see any exit. You know, we're on this road, and there are no exits, and there's nowhere to pull over, and the shoulders are closed, and we're just driving into hell. I hope I'm wrong again. I hope they turn this around, and they go to Minnesota on Sunday and win, and they go to Indiana and win, and they have a 3-2 5-game road trip, and they beat Washington and Charlotte at home, and all of a sudden they build some momentum. Then Giannis comes back, and there are a couple of games under 500, and they get the whole thing together. I would love to live in that world and eat my words, but I, like a lot of diehard Bucks fans right now, with the way they're playing minus Giannis and the way they were even playing with Giannis at times this year, where they are right now in the standings, how much longer he's going to be out, it is tough to see a path to relevance this year. And if you're not relevant this year, and he's got one more year left on his deal at the end of this year, it is becoming a very real possibility that he is going to want out at the end of this year. Disappointing, but I just, with the injuries and this roster construction not exactly working out, I don't know where they go from here. All right, let's make some picks.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Never tell me the odds. If someone gives you 10,000 to 1 on anything, you take it.
That's a cool G, Daddy-O. Now you gotta let it ride.
We'll rip through these. Not a great week last week. 27, 26, and 3 overall after a 1-3 week. So we just continue to hover around 500. We have not added any of the futures that we've won, and there are plenty of those. We have had some future losses. Last night, by the way, one of the games of the year, that Seattle-LA game, and it broke the way we wanted it to break as Packer fans, and it broke the way I wanted it to break as somebody who has a future bet on the Niners to win the NFC West. Because now, Seattle wins that in overtime. Now they're 12-3, Rams are 11-4, Niners are 10-4. Niners have a game in Indy, Monday Night Football against Phillip Rivers and the Colts this Monday. You win that, you're 11-4. They have the tiebreaker with LA for second place. They have the tiebreaker right now with Seattle, and Seattle ends the year. Their final game of the regular season is in San Francisco. So they have the home field advantage there. I like the way that whole thing lines up. So that game last night was tremendous. Overtime, Seahawks go for 2 at the end of overtime. They get it, a walk-off 2-point conversion. They win 38-37. They had that wild 2-point conversion that converted when they were down 30-22 and scored a touchdown. And it turns out the lateral, the pass behind the line of scrimmage, hit somebody's helmet and then recovered and in the end zone. That was a chaotic game, one of the most entertaining games of the year. Seahawks won that 38-37. So 4 picks for you. I am taking Tampa minus 2.5 in Carolina. Neither of those teams seem to want to win the NFC South. Tampa, I just think, has more talent overall, even though they haven't played to that level. But I will take Tampa on the road, minus 2.5 in Carolina to get a game lead in the NFC South. I'm taking Denver at home against Jacksonville. More money on Denver. We've won a ton of money on Denver. I'm putting more there. I need the Jaguars to lose to help my Texans to win the AFC South bet. I will take Denver minus 3. I am going to take the Texans at home against a very bad Raider team. It's a huge number, but the Texans' defense is the best in the NFL. C.J. Stroud seems to be getting things together the last few weeks. I will take the Texans minus 14. 2 touchdown favorites at home against the Raiders. And then I have the Cowboys-Chargers over because we've cashed a lot of tickets on Cowboy total points overs this year. Even though that Charger defense isn't bad, I will take the over. It's in Dallas on 49.5. Tampa minus 2.5, Denver minus 3, Texans minus 14, Cowboys-Chargers over 49.5. Now, we will have, even though I have off all week, we will have a podcast on Monday, a victory podcast or a not victory podcast. It'll be a coffee table podcast on Monday from home to recap the Packer-Bear game and take a look at what's going on the rest of the week in the sports world. And I'm pretty sure we'll have a Friday podcast, tabletop podcast again next week as well. We'll stay on that same Monday-Friday schedule. Have a happy, safe weekend. We'll chat with you Monday.